I've never been a big fantasy guy. That seems like a strange admission, almost like an admission of guilt, because I've been working on Morrowind for the past 17 months now. But it's true. When I think of fantasy, I think of Lord of the Rings and Tolkien and The Hobbit. What excited me more than anything else about Morrowind was that it captured that science fiction vibe, that there was a world out there that was filled with exotic creatures and customs and cultures, things that you hadn't even heard about before, things that were delightfully weird. I got my first introduction to Morrowind through the Dragonborn DLC from Skyrim. I'd never played the games before. In fact, I had never even played a fantasy game before this point, except for Dragon Age Origins, which was kind of my gateway drug into fantasy games. I loved the fact that there was a Viking vibe to it. That I got into. That was why I was really interested in exploring this world, but it kind of wore off pretty quickly. And then I discovered Dragonborn. You enter on a ship, and it's covered in ash. That's not something that you see most of the time. That's not something you see most of the time in most fantasy games. Just to have an area that's covered in this volcanic ash. And then the architecture, completely foreign. They have these crab-like, which I would later learn would be redderant structures. They had these columnar basalts, these rock pillars and formations that were both alien and familiar. And I remember looking at this scene and being like, where did this come from? How can this be? How can this exist? Like, this rich lore, there's gotta be more here. That's how I learned about Morrowind. One of the best things about Bethesda games, in fact I think it's probably the best thing about the Elder Scrolls series, is that it's open to modding. It's open to people telling their own stories through the game engine, so that we become an extension of the development team, as it were. It becomes a shared experience. But the big problem is that there weren't a lot of assets that people could go ahead and use as resources within their own mods. Not everyone knows how to model. Not everyone has the time to go ahead and spend a day doing texture work. That's why I started working on a library, so that people who were still in love with this game 14 years on would have the tools available to them so that they could tell their own stories. Outlander is a mod. It's completely compatible with Morrowind Rebirth and Tamriel Rebuilt. So far there's over 800 meshes and about 250 textures. Each of these new assets is custom and will be made available to the public upon its release. So far it's revamping about a half dozen locations with about 200 new NPCs. Most important of all though, is that this will be given to the community for free. Completely free. So if you support the idea of what I'm doing, please let me know. Even if it is just a share or a follow, it means the world to me. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a good one.